Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Home Performance Advocate podcast. In this episode, we're going to be doing something a bit different. We have essentially wrapped up our season of roundtable discussions about manufactured housing and how to improve performance. But there's just a few topics that we didn't quite cover, and as we transition from that period of time where we're discussing manufactured housing into a new period of time where we're going to kind of look at heat pumps in more detail, we figured we would cover just a few quick hitters. And so it's not going to be a roundtable with Parker and Chance and whatever other guests we typically have with us. Instead, it's just going to be me going over some quick improvements to manufactured housing, starting with do-it-yourself manufactured housing. So we do believe this topic is important. Generally, manufactured housing stock makes up about 10% of any state's given housing percentage. And so doing it yourself to improve these is one very simple, low investment way that those that own manufactured homes or anyone part of a healthy housing program, a WAP program, weatherization program, that kind of thing, can go in and improve these homes in just a short amount of time with a very low cost. So again, whether you're part of one of those healthy homes programs that goes into these neighborhoods and does quick 30-minute to an hour quick assessments and turnarounds on some weatherization in these homes, or you own one yourself and you just want to improve it and maybe help with a few small things, we're going to look at that. And so we'll start with what areas are the same as a typical site-built home. Where can you improve manufactured housing that would stay the same for a site-built one as well? And of course, both have windows and doors. So anything that you can do in a site-built home, any information you can find on improving what's called fenestrations, so those intentional openings in a space, we can do the same thing. This includes around the edges, caulking. We can use any kind of caulking, and typically you can find ones that match the color of your interior, as you want to generally keep it consistent as it moves from the wall to the strip around the door, the edge around the door. And so you can caulk around that, and there will typically be a few holes, and doing that can improve the air leakage just a bit. It'll help a bit with air sealing. We've done some research and some numbers on our own healthy homes programs, and the gains aren't large, but even marginal gains, and especially if that area of your home is used frequently around a window or a door and you sit next to it frequently to read, you can help a bit with that air sealing, and it can improve comfort in those areas. So caulking around that exterior portion of the trim that goes around windows and doors can help. And then as you move inwards, we can then caulk around the windows. On the inside, there's typically a barrier where the window is actually going to meet the siding, and it's not important for movement. We don't obviously want to seal up any movement on the windows. We want that to still be operable, but there is typically an inside portion where we have that being met, and that can improve air leakage even more than around the edges in some cases. So we're going to caulk around the outside of the edging for the windows and doors, and then on the inside of those window portions, and then sometimes around doors you may see small gaps or cracks that you could also caulk around different parts of that door cavity. And then on the movable parts, we of course have weather stripping. Now in manufactured homes, a lot of times, not always, but they will typically be single pane metal windows. So as we get our weather stripping, can actually improve air sealing quite a bit. There's typically a lot of gaps in those metal single frame windows since they've been around for a while. So we'll go ahead and weather strip on the interior of those portions, and we want to make sure that we hit each area that is on the actual window itself. We're going to recommend a bit stronger weather stripping for those types of windows. Typically, we want to look for a higher quality vinyl, potentially with that little air pocket or bubble in the middle where we can put it along the interior sides, and whatever type of window movement it is, whether it's just a slider or it's a casement or it's some kind of awning hopper, we can go ahead and put that vinyl stripping weather strip on that. And this is cheap. I mean, you can get a whole roll for $10 if you want to get a higher quality, $20 for this kind of stuff on, in whatever retail store next to you. I mean, they're going to be at any Home Depot, Lowe's, anything like that. So we're going to put that on all the windows and the interiors of the doors. And another thing on doors that is often common in manufactured housing is the foundation shifts a lot more. And so you're going to have a lot of doors and windows that are unaligned, and you're going to see these gaps in the doors and windows pretty frequently. So you can get some very thick weather stripping to go on the interior of these doors, help it fit a little better. And then also something on the bottom of the doors, or what's called the gasket, the carrier. So we're going to attach something to the bottom of these doors. And again, typically we'll want a little bit higher quality for the manufactured homes, as it does tend to be an area that suffers more than a site built home, as there is that shifting in foundations. So we again recommend that stronger vinyl, weather stripping. Again, a whole roll is not that expensive, and anyone can do this. I mean, it's going to take 5 minutes to do a window at max, and then once you get a little bit more common with the caulking and the weather stripping, and one tube of caulking can handle an entire unit, essentially. I mean, even more so sometimes, just going around each door and window. And again, we have run numbers. We typically see anywhere in reduction after doing this, anywhere from 200 to 500 CFM reduction running a blower door, for leakage on those units. And so we will see some, it's not going to be huge, again, marginal gains. One thing that we notice a lot on manufactured housing that, again, can be done in a quick assessment with a Healthy Homes program or for yourself is getting just a tube of 1 part spray foam from a store and just a spray foam gun. And, one of the things that we'd say is a real practical piece of advice for this is sharing. Usually, again, these manufactured housing communities are tight knit, close together. Share the tools that you have. I mean, one of these guns of spray foam is going to be a little bit more than, a caulking gun, but it can be used forever. I mean, you can, as long as it's well cleaned, we can put a new can of spray foam on this and use it from house to house to house. So each unit can use these, and it just involves a quick going around the exterior. And you're always going to find gaps and cracks around windows, around dryer vents, especially, and not sealing the vent itself. We don't want to seal the inside of the dryer vent, but anything around that dryer vent or around those windows, or especially around if there is any kind of AC unit that's connected to that or swamp cooler, we're going to seal around those gaps, making sure that moisture is not going to be an issue, but we'll seal around those gaps with spray foam on the outside and even underneath a bit. So this is where it's going to differentiate quite a bit from site-built homes. We obviously don't have skirting and typically the same open crawl space foundation area that we have in a manufactured home. And we don't just want to spray willy-nilly down there, like anywhere around that skirting, sealing up the skirting. We don't want to seal our skirting to it with the spray foam, but sometimes we can see different gaps along the skirting where you take off the skirting up in the gasket, essentially, that's connecting the skirting to the home. Behind that, there can sometimes be areas where we can air seal, and you'll know if there's a slight gap in between, say, that metal I-beam that'll run across, or some kind of foundation structural wood boards that go across it. What essentially is the rim joist of the home, but it looks a bit different than, again, a site-built home. We can spray around that. It may differ per unit, and it may be a bit more difficult. There are a few things we definitely don't want to do as we're air sealing a unit ourselves. We don't want to take the place of a full scope of work for encapsulation in these areas or sealing up the belly. We don't want to make it more difficult for plumbers, electricians to come in and do work, as it's just going to get ripped up anyway when inevitably a problem happens, which is why one of the things that is a bit more risky is trying to air seal underneath a water heater closet. That's one area that it's actually going to be major. A lot of manufactured homes have water heater closets on the exterior of the conditioned zone. In fact, if it's a gas water heater And for those listening and wanting to do this on your own unit, it's really easy to tell if it's gas or electric. Electric is not going to have a giant metal flue, or it looks like just a vent pipe and it's metal and it goes up and out of the unit, or hopefully it goes up and out of the unit. There's a lot that I've seen where they don't. But it's going to be on that exterior portion. They have to be if they're gas. So what we're going to do is we're actually going to seal off the edges of that water heater closet from the interior to the exterior. So open up that exterior water heater closet door and seal around all of the edges in the shape of the rectangle that it is that connects that water heater closet to the interior space. This is going to help improve not only air leakage, but also reduce the chance of any carbon monoxide or byproducts of the combustion process getting into the livable space. Moisture can help with moisture a bit. So we're going to seal that off. And then that closet itself is going to be one of the areas we can also see some improvement. Now, here's where it may get a little tricky, but still doable by yourself or as part of a Healthy Homes program. We're going to look to some level of insulation that's going to give us gains in efficiency from that water heater closet. We have two main options here. We can either insulate the water heater itself, and I'll go over ways in a second, or we can insulate that door to the water heater closet. Now, one thing, again, we want to make sure we identify, is this an electric or is this a gas unit? Because it's going to change how we do things. If it's an electric, that's the easiest, best case scenario for insulating. We don't have to worry about things that we have to worry about with a gas, like open flames, anything like that. So throw a water heater blanket on that. They're not too expensive. And you're going to see gains, especially if it is in that outside portion. It'll help with insulating that unit. It'll reduce the standby heat loss that a tank typically puts off. So throw a water heater blanket on electric, no problem. And cover up the top, cover up the sides, as long as it doesn't look like there's any exposed wiring or anything of that nature, or any existing moisture problems. We can insulate that with a water heater blanket, no problem. And we can also insulate the door itself. Now, this is where when we come to a gas water heater, we want to be careful because they are potentially hazardous if we install a water heater blanket improperly on a gas water heater. And if you're not comfortable with doing this, you don't know, and you can't find guides on YouTube. Basically, we don't want to cover up the hatches or the openings on the bottom of the water heater where you're going to see like our pilot light, and we're going to have some kind of intake outtake typically on that bottom portion. We do not want to cover those, and we don't want to put it around the top because that flue itself is going to have some level of spillage, some byproducts that are coming out of there. We don't want to create a fire hazard. So if you're uncomfortable, just don't do it. Don't put a water heater blanket on a gas. You can put a water heater blanket on a gas if it's done properly, and it will help reduce standby heat loss. But another thing that we recommend is getting some rigid foam board. And we're going to take rigid foam board and our 1-part spray foam, and we're going to actually insulate and air seal portions of the door that lead to the water heater closet. Now, if there's a vent on the door, we do not want to seal that vent typically. If, again, we're maintaining a normal, or what I say is normal, it's an atmospheric draft water heater. This will have an opening on the top with a flue, and you can actually look in and see what's called the throat of the water heater and look down and see. It looks like you can see inside of it, essentially, for identification purposes. We want to make sure that has enough air to keep functioning properly, so we don't want to seal any vents that could be on there. But if we're switching to a higher efficiency unit, or it's electric, or we're switching to a sealed combustion unit where it's not going to have that opening, it's going to be typically PVC pipes, could be tankless even, and we can put that on that water heater closet. Let's fully insulate that door in those cases. But we're going to essentially put rigid foam board around the interior of the doors and seal around that door, and it's going to help us with some level of efficiency. We have seen some gains in doing this in our own programs, especially when we do supplement it with a transition to an electric water heater or a sealed combustion tankless water heater, which are HUD approved. They're fine to put in a mobile home as long as it's done properly, and it is, again, a HUD or Housing and Urban Development approved unit for that mobile home for that manufactured home. Not super common, but can be done and will lead to efficiency improvements. Another thing that we can insulate, and it will help a bit, is insulating our pipes. We don't need to insulate sewer lines, and we want to actually make sure that we keep sewer lines part of the condition zone. So we don't want to fully separate sewer lines from the unit of the home itself. These are, again, going to be like PVC. They don't need a whole lot of heat, so it won't be heat resistant quality. But we'll insulate around any copper piping or any piping we see like that. That will be supply that needs to have some heat running through it and going to the unit itself. It's going to help our pipes from freezing. So those are a few things that we can do air sealing and insulation wise. And something you can do to prepare is, if you're going to be having work done on a larger scale, or you're doing a healthy homes program before someone comes in and does a bit more work in insulation or air sealing in that belly area, or air sealing the ducts, which can actually be done by yourself. You just get some mastic and seal around any ducts. We have more information about that in our course and how to do that. But one of the things that can be done is cleaning. This is a big one. I mean, we want to make sure if we're getting work done in that area that we've cleaned out that bottom area. That can add a lot of money to a work order if someone has to come in and clean out before they actually do work. So cleaning is just going to be a big part. Prepping that unit for work is going to be huge. That can be done yourself to save money for any program or for someone getting the work done themselves. So all of that, our air sealing, our insulation, some of it happening on the inside, some of it happening on the outside. Typically on the inside, we're using caulking and weather stripping. On the outside, we could be using 1 part foam. And then if there's huge gaps, we can use rigid foam board or some kind of um, a gasket. It'll be a foam. I'm blanking on the word right now, but it'll be a foam circle essentially that goes around the interior of big gaps around where pipes and will go into a home, and we'll put that foam around that circle and then spray over it. So that'll lead to some higher levels of air sealing where our foam might not be able to reach all the way around, or our caulking might not be able to work. So we're going to use that. Backer rods is what they're called. And we'll put those in there. And then we're going to want to maintain quality monitoring, air quality monitoring on the inside. We want to make sure that we don't seal up any chemicals or cause any problems with our combustion appliances. The furnace should already be sealed combustion because that's standard in a manufactured home. But our water heater, that's where we're going to see variability. So we'll insulate those if we can. And again, make sure you check if it's gas water. It's better to be safe. So if it's a gas water heater, we if you're uncomfortable and have no experience, maybe let someone else handle that, or find someone in the neighborhood that is comfortable doing that. And if you are that person in the neighborhood that's going through this process or part of that healthy homes process in a program, go to other units, share this. It shouldn't be just one unit. Let's improve the whole neighborhood and use the same materials. Why not? It's going to help the whole neighborhood and improve the electric cost of that neighborhood. So anyway, these are some good things to do for yourself in a healthy homes program or in your own manufactured home. DIY manufactured home improvement is something that will lead to marginal gains, but still gains in efficiency, and sometimes can largely affect comfort, again, if it's in those major spots and areas. So 1 part spray foam, caulking, rigid foam board, and backer rods are going to be some of your best friends when doing DIY air sealing work, and as well as weather stripping for fenestrations. Thank you for listening. As always, if you want to follow us and know when our new season on heat pumps comes out, or when we have a guest on, where we have some guests that we're looking to have on the podcast in the future that are going to be great, helpful sources of information for various programs and running heat pumps and all of the above for home performance, because we do want to be advocates for the field of home performance. So feel free to follow us on Spotify or YouTube, know when those new episodes are coming out, and let's all work together to help advocate for this field to improve our comfort, help turn some houses into some homes. All right. Thank you for listening.